Hi everyone, it's Kasia from Tarot Map, and this is another episode in my Inspired Tarot Map series. And this time I have something totally different for you. It's not connected to tarot, but it is connected to life and it is connected to inspiration. And I want to introduce one of my best friends in real life, not just in virtual reality, Pati Bielak-Smith. Patti is the author of Dementia Together, book that just came out on the 1st of January 2020. She's the certified NVC, meaning nonviolent communication trainer. She has spent, while studying NVC, 5 years caring for people with dementia. And she's also a member of British Association for Counselling and Psychotherapy. And to add to her amazing abilities, she's also a regular meditator and teaches meditation. And she's based in Wales, actually, in the UK. Hello, Patti.
Hello, Kasia.
I'm so happy to have you on my Inspired Tarot Map and to show your beautiful and important work that you do to people who hopefully will watch this interview and enjoy it and get a lot of benefits from it. So, Dementia Together, an interesting subject, and you wrote a book about it. I remember thinking, when did you manage to write the book? But you did. But could you share with us what has prompted you to write a book on dementia specifically? Why not on cancer or any other disease? Let's call it like this or whatever. How come you wrote a book on dementia? Why is it so important for you, this particular subject?
Yeah, it kind of came my way. I wasn't there looking for dementia. I wasn't, in the world thinking, oh, I wonder what is dementia or where can I find someone with dementia? It wasn't like that at all. At some point in my life, I decided that I wanted to be able to devote my time to study, and I wanted to find ways of supporting myself financially in a way that would not be kind of in any conflict with my meditation life or with my ambition or desire, aspiration to help others. And one of my friends told me about this work that was available to work as a caregiver, as a carer. So I went for training for that because that would allow me to have an income, but at the same time be helpful to others. Yes, and have regular meditation practice that wouldn't kind of be disturbed very much. So my first client actually had dementia, and when I was told that I'm going to go and live with someone who has dementia, I actually didn't know what that meant. I just the only thing I think I clicked was that they were elderly, and that's the only thing I knew. And they were told to be very aggressive and very difficult. And even the people who were introducing me to this job, they said that they are very sorry that they are putting me on the deep end. So I was like, what does that even mean? That I'm put on a deep end. And I was very lucky because I actually was introduced to this work with another carer who has been extremely helpful to me, meaning she has taught me many ways of learning how to be with someone who is, well, what they call displaying difficult behavior, And so a lot of our work was around managing that person. And I stayed there over a period of a summer that went on for a couple of months. And towards the end of my stay, this person actually completely stopped displaying aggressive behavior, and she just didn't seem to be as agitated as she was when I first met her. And the family members who have very much noticed that, from their perspective, they've seen, numerous carers serving in this household over the period of at least 5 years until I arrived, and I also was with another carer who had very similar outlook like myself. And what happened was that the family asked me, could you write a letter to all the future coming carers and tell them, what have you done? What have you done to our relative that she's so much calmer and so much easier going? And so I suppose that was maybe the first prompt, when I actually needed to sit down and write some of my thoughts, and also kind of realize backwards, because it wasn't that I came with a plan. I didn't study it in any way whatsoever. So I suppose for many readers of the book, you don't have to know anything about dementia in order to approach that book. Because it is very likely, and retrospectively, you'll probably find out they actually did know people with dementia, as I did realize when I have started working with people, and I went like, hold on, didn't my great-grandmother, didn't she have dementia? I kind of realized that she had, and I completely, if you asked me just before I went to this job, do I have anything to do with dementia? Do I know anything about it? Have I ever met anyone? I would say no. Until I realized, oh, actually, yes, I have had someone with dementia, actually someone really close, and I didn't quite realize that was it.
So would you say that very often we don't recognize, or we're not aware that we have indeed met or even are in close contact with people with dementia? It's not so easily to recognizable.
Yes, I think so. And there are so many ways we can label someone in a way that stops us from asking questions. Well, in my case, I was great-granddaughter, so from my point of view, my great-grandmother was just old. That's all I knew. So I think for many of us, that's how we kind of explain maybe unusual behaviors, a change in the way people are. And we say, oh, they are just old, but that's one very important research outcome, is that dementia is actually not caused by old age, which means that not everyone will get dementia as they grow old, but that also means that some people who are not old at all will get dementia too. So at the moment there is a movement to recognize that people in their 30s can have dementia too.
Wow. Yeah, you mentioned this in your book, and also, I have the book on the like in the Kindle, but I was really surprised because, as you say, I think still that I don't know anyone with dementia, so I will have to go and think harder. And just because we're friends, I really made an effort to read the book, and I was so surprised how. First of all, that the book is not dry. So even though I'm thinking dementia, like, can I read this? Is it going to be interesting for me, if I don't know anyone? And it's really interesting. And what I want to really stress out, that from your perspective, from your perspective as a nonviolent communication trainer, and your psychotherapy, also counseling background, and the meditation background, this book is actually really perfectly suited for anyone who wants to work on any type of relationship. If this is a person with dementia, which you give a lot of example of this particular way, but all the kind of the bigger scope of the book, I feel it fits even love relationships, or people who have any type of illness, where a carer, there is this kind of distinction between a carer and the career, or somebody who you care for or care about. And I feel this book, you managed to write it so well. I have to say it, because it's really my true opinion, that it is a book that is suitable for much broader scope than just people who think, oh, I don't have anyone with dementia, I don't really, it's not for me, because it's really about building connections with people in our lives. And this is beautiful what you write here. So moving on to the next question, which I wanted to ask you, you are speaking in your book, you even call it a dementia relationship, or our dementia, where you mention about two parts of the relationship, the carer and the person who lives with dementia, and then they both live with dementia. So can you tell us a little bit more how you see, and why you called it dementia relationship, and what is it all about? Can you explain to us a little bit deeper about that?
Well, first of all, it's a joy to hear that you enjoyed reading the book. It's really important for me to hear that because, of course, I wrote the book for others, so for them to,
Yeah, not
um,
for me, you mean.
for others, meaning including you. Yeah, and in a sense, that it's wonderful that you read that book, even though you don't have any particular interest in this topic, in the sense that, you don't have anyone in your immediate family who has dementia. And this is great testimony, for the book, that this is, as you say, it is about any relationship, and that was very important. Actually, my editor, who I really wanted to praise, Kira Freesta, she has made it. Um, she has really encouraged me to kind of um, put it at the very, like one of the most important principles of the book, to stress the relationship. And yes, I totally agree with that, because this is about, we're talking about human relationships, and the principles on which human relationships run, they don't expire when someone gets dementia. They are as meaningful and as, and the skills you would require to build meaningful relationships, sustain meaningful relationship in whatever strikes you, in life, because something will strike you in life. It's like, yeah, is it possible that we can go through life and not be touched by any illness or any difficulty? It will, something will come, there will be difficulty. And then there is a question of, how do you approach it? And if you see it as something that happens to just one person, like, for example, someone is diagnosed with Alzheimer's, let's say, and you think, oh, they have a problem, that person has a problem. But, anyone who has been in any contact with someone affected by dementia, they know that actually illnesses that affects the entire environment. So not only actually a relationship, the entire environment, because, they change the way they perceive the world. And and this is one of the things that was very important for me, because, in the past, dementia would be considered to be simply madness. And and madness actually on both sides. So not only on the side of the person who has, who is displaying some signs of mental illness, but also on the side of the caregiver. And that is a big topic that I really wanted to kind of emphasize in the book, is that actually both people are heavily affected by dementia. So, if you are a caregiver to someone who has dementia, you will be affected heavily. This is not going to be like you will be able only to say, oh, they have dementia and I just help them out. You will be also affected by it in some way. And then there is that, madness of a caregiver, meaning, if you ever looked after anyone, like full time, you realize that, like, you go crazy. It really is very difficult. um, and it's such sacrifice, to the point that people need to kind of, they try to adjust their whole life, the way they think about themselves, and be of service to the other person. And then they run into this incredible difficulty where they kind of run out of steam. They burn out. And in a some sense, they become mad themselves, because, it's sometimes, you as a carer, you go for such a long time without meeting your own needs, that this is very hard. Um, so I wanted to think of the book as the book that kind of helps you not to lose your senses. So kind of go back to your senses, in a way that, kind of connecting with yourself is a very important part of the relationship building, because we tend to think that, oh, if someone has dementia, they require care, and that care goes in, like, in one direction. You just have to give them care, look after them, give them whatever they need. But you forget that, well, you are, as a caregiver, totally essential component to the whole thing, and you need to be able to look after your needs too. And one of the ways of looking after your needs is to, yeah, to wake up to your senses in a kind of mindfulness way, kind of starting noticing things around you and within you, but also in this, yes, the sense of linking in with your own needs, and your needs being part of it. So it's not like, here is a person with dementia, here is my care delivered to that person with dementia, and my needs either don't matter or they are somewhere else. Or, I often hear carers saying, oh, my needs don't matter. I wouldn't be able to look after this person if I had any needs, and they don't realize actually your needs are so important, actually equally important to the dementia relationship as the person you're looking after.
Wow, that's like big words. And I think also for people who have read or will be reading the book, you give a lot of practical examples from your own experience from your work, and also from your non-violent communication practice. And I feel also, in some sense that the more we also, I don't want to say work on ourselves, but in the sense of like develop ourselves and develop that connection to ourselves, the easier it is to actually really understand what you're saying, because it's very hard to like to just kind of read the book and go and do it all. Like it requires practice, it requires patience. You will fuck up, you will do things that are just, you will be ashamed of later on, and probably that happened to you too, because I also feel like in the book you stress also that, and you share vulnerably about your own kind of mistakes or how you misunderstood or your own misconceptions about dementia, or the relationship building, about actually caring for your own needs, how you had to go through this process of learning. And I love how you write also that building this relationship, it's also a process. It's not just, oh, I've built it and now it's kind of, it's going on, because dementia is like any other maybe mental illness, very broad. There is no rules that somebody will behave exactly this way, or they will display this percentage of this and that percentage of that. So I would like you to maybe share with us like a story from the book that specifically like stands out for you, that you could maybe share, as you share a lot of stories, but maybe you could share one with us right now where maybe it could demonstrate a little bit that kind of relationship, that dementia relationship we were talking about. If you can think of something.
Yes, I love these stories. They, actually you learn from experience, right? You learn through doing these things. And so I suppose maybe I can tell you a story where I found it really helpful, not only for the other person, but primarily for myself. Yeah. So I was looking after one of the clients that who sometimes would lose a sense of where they are, and they felt in some way the way they perceived their situation was that they were kept captive, or that they were imprisoned in a house, and that's somehow the carer, myself, has either kidnapped them or is the prison guard or whatever. So there was one situation where this client, she decided to phone the police because she was very highly scared and very agitated, very angry. And I suppose I did have an option of not letting her phone the police, because she was on a wheelchair. And so I had actually some power there. I could have stopped her from phoning the police. And to be absolutely honest, I did actually a couple of times. There were situations in which I didn't kind of helped her to make, I didn't stop her, but I didn't help her to phone the police. But there was this one situation where I did help her to actually contact the police, because out of this kind of, okay, you want to phone the police? Okay, go ahead, phone the police, go ahead, from this kind of, I think it was like 3 a.m. and I was like super tired. And she did phone the police. And when she phoned, she was saying all sorts of most terrible things about myself, how, that I am basically violent towards her, or that I am, harming her in some way, keeping her against her will in this house, which, by the way, was her own house, right, in which I was working for her. But, this is what she was saying to the police. And I was standing, like next door, I could hear what she's saying, and I was very upset. I was really, my heart was sinking as I was hearing her expressing all these things, because I thought, goodness, well, imagine receiving a phone call like that from an elderly lady. You would assume she is vulnerable, and she's probably right? So I was thinking, great, well, I imagine that, well, we don't have any sleep this night. We will have a visit from the police. I will have to probably phone the agency, phone the family, get everyone involved in the middle of the night. And that's what I was facing. Plus, feeling really shaken by how, the words she was describing me in, to the officials. And as this was happening, I was feeling just helpless in this situation. And I felt, well, the only thing I can do for myself is to connect with how I am now in this situation. I really connected with this upset and disappointment. There was a lot of disappointment in me, and fear. I was very fearful that something will actually happen, meaning, someone will come, someone perhaps will take me to the police station to give reports, and all of this. And I really kind of tuned in with my need for safety, and also my need for recognition, that I was really longing to be recognized, how much I've given to this person, and how much I care about her too. And so I really connected to that. I thought, I actually really do care about her, and have I done my best? Yes, I have done my best. I kind of relaxed, I thought, okay, well, whatever will happen. And I just kind of reached that sense of calm within myself. And that all happened while she was reporting me on the police. And I heard her putting the phone down. So I walked into the room in a very different space of mind when I was when I left her. I was really upset. I wasn't showing her how much I was upset, but I was expressing originally some emotions of frustrations and everything. I came back in a completely different spirit to her, and not knowing what to expect and in what kind of mindset she's going to be once she finished. And she saw me and she said, "Oh, there you are. I was looking for you everywhere. Where have you been? I'm so glad you came, because I've been so fearful, and I was so scared. I didn't know where you were. I'm so glad you came." So, so somehow she had a chance to express her frustration and her, fear to the police, and that's released something in her. Plus, she saw me coming in really open to her. She saw me coming in, with the body language. I came to her as a friend, and I wasn't triggered anymore. And that completely changed the dynamic. And I later found out that the police actually had her, they knew her address and her phone number, and that was not the first time she was reporting carers. That was a reoccurring thing, which I didn't know before, and they didn't take any actions. They just kind of, they listened to her but didn't follow it up. But the family was informed, and they were, fine about it, and quite surprised when they found out us the next day being very happy with each other.
And
Yeah.
can you maybe share also that story with the house, like when you took one of the person?
Yeah.
I don't know if it's the same person maybe, but
Yeah.
because I feel like this is this type of building the relationship when we have to change a little bit exactly what, like when you connect to your own feelings, but also when you maybe use your imagination a little bit more, or shift your perception a little bit out of this I'm right and they're wrong.
Mm-hmm.
That magic can happen, really. Can you share
Yeah.
that story? I love that story in the book.
Yes. Well, yes, it's a story about a person who really, yes, she often didn't recognize the house she was in, and she kept insisting that she wants to be taken home, even though the house she was in, she lived in for, like, I don't know, 50 years or something. It was most of her life, and she was 97 actually when I met her. So yeah, she was really elderly, and yes, and I was on a shift with another carer who was trying to convince her, that she is in her home. So she used well, all the kind of logical things you can think of, like, look, this is, I don't know, this is a photo of your late husband, and this is your bedroom, don't you recognize your chair, And she was like kind of really pointing out to everything that was around her that could possibly remind her that she is at home. But she didn't take any of that in, and she kept insisting that she's not at home and she wants to go home. And so I kind of, when I entered the shift, when I came in, I knew that this is not going to work. I would try that myself, but because of the previous care, I already knew, it is obviously not working. She is not feeling reassured in any way by kind of looking around and recognizing objects. So I just, often these things came out of desperation, like you didn't have any other choice, what else do you do? So I kind of asked her, okay, you would like to be taken home, and I think I'm not sure where your home is. Would you like to show me? So she kind of showed me the way, like very confidently, suddenly, like just before, when we were trying to convince her that she is at home, she appeared to be very pathetic and weak, and you have to take me somewhere, like it's like as if it was on you have to make it all better. But then when I asked her, well, would you like to show me where your home is, or describe me where your home is, she suddenly felt like, this shift of, oh, I'm in charge, okay, I can show you where my home is. And she kind of wandered with me off, into we went into outside of the house, and from the outside of the house she said, well, here we are, we arrived, so this is my home. Which she was obviously showing in the same house we came out of. But in her mind, somehow this journey outside of the house, the journey that she was leading, she was showing me the way, completely shifted her perception. And when we saw the house from the outside, she was like, oh, welcome. She suddenly started treating me like a guest in her house, and saying, oh, well, if you would like to have a cup of tea, there is a kitchen, go ahead and make yourself tea. Like she became a host, she became in charge, she became empowered, and so that was surprising. That was a very, very interesting turnout.
Yeah, that's an awesome story. And I think that also shows that this taking a different approach to that usual logical, that's how things are and this is right. And obviously people who maybe live with dementia, that's not right for them. And sometimes it's maybe hard for us to take in, because sometimes it's even for their safety, sometimes it's not so easy to make these decisions, like, yeah, let's go, or go and show me, like she couldn't probably go by herself. So by all means, you always have to take this kind of safety in account. But it's interesting how even slight maybe shift in asking a question, or asking how they are, what they want to show, what they mean, maybe just kind of playing along might shift this. And before we recorded, we spoke a little bit about these questions, because you mentioned that in the dementia kind of theory, there is a lot of talk about actually not asking questions, or not triggering people with dementia by asking questions. But you have a little bit different view on that, right? So can you just tell us about this, like about the questions themselves?
So there is this approach to dementia care, which has arisen, I suppose, from a wish to not confront people, with Alzheimer's or other types of dementia with questions that they don't know answers to. Like, for example, oh, how long have you lived in this house? Or on which street is your house? Or, how many children do you have? These are kind of questions that we perhaps would, in ordinary social situations, kind of, this is how we get the conversation going, by asking these questions, or like, how long have you worked as so-and-so? And so, all these factual questions, I agree, they can be very confrontational, because, the person with dementia, they mostly don't know they have dementia, that, or they are not so aware. So you will unlikely get the answer of, I'm sorry, I won't recall these facts because I have dementia. They probably won't tell you that. They are most likely going to feel embarrassed or really anxious that they actually don't know the answers to these questions. Or, they might not even remember that they were ever married. And if you ask, them a question, oh, how long have you been married to your husband? It's like, what husband? I never been married. To my best knowledge at this point, I've never been married, So that kind of, you run into problems, right? Especially when you go into, surely you have a husband. I met him. His name is John. Don't you remember John? And you kind of, and that's where it can really lead to severe conflict and a lot of trouble on both sides. You as a person trying to just make a nice conversation, you will be either switching off, which that was my first reaction to dementia when I realized that my great grandmother had dementia, and when she kept continuously repeating herself, I completely switched off. I just walked off. I thought, oh, okay. It was like, and you walk off. You just don't continue because you think this person is kind of not here. Like so that's the reaction. Sometimes people keep arguing, keep saying, well, you don't be ridiculous. Of course, you're married. And that doesn't end well because, they feel patronized or whatever, whereas you think, you have to kind of refresh their minds, So I understand that these kind of questions are dead end. But I wouldn't want to kind of, throw away all the questions from the relationship. Can you imagine having a relationship and not being able to ask any questions, right? Mm-hmm. So I very much encourage people to have questions. I very, very encourage people to have real conversations with people with dementia. It's like, it really helps everyone. It will help you. It will help them. I think it completely changes, it just makes things lighter and more connecting, when you are interested in the other person. And how do you show interest in the other person? Well, by asking questions, right? It's a very natural human way of getting to know one another. So the only adjustment you need to make is just have a think about what kind of, sometimes it means we have to get out of our habitual ways, and that's why I say actually dementia will affect all of us, anyone around a person with dementia, actually as a society. And this is the kind of in a broader spectrum, it will affect everyone, everyone in the world is in some way affected by dementia. And that sometimes means that we are, required to shift our ways a little bit. So the questions I think are always safe to ask are the questions, like, oh, did you enjoy this cup of tea? How was it like? I was like, do you enjoy the sun? Or if they tell you a memory, like, when my great grandmother, she had one particular memory, which is actually quite true for many people with dementia, that they will have a particular memory that they would like to share with you, sometimes several times a day, the same memory. But, I originally didn't know, well, I just heard that, I've heard it like 15 times, so what is there to ask? Well, you can ask lots of questions, like, for example, okay, how was it like doing this? Was it fun? Was it scary? Was it exciting? It's like, oh, did it feel good? You can ask them all sorts of ways, things like, how did things that they are telling you about, how did they affect them? They will know that. And you don't need memory to know that. You can, in a sense, you can just say how you are about it now. It's like, if you remember, I don't know, being at war, was it scary? Yeah, it was very scary. We're all scared. These are the kind of questions you can easily ask, and they will build more meaningful and genuine connection with someone.
Yeah, that's beautiful. And also I feel like they feel like they are being heard, which is very important, because we actually don't know how that feels when you live with dementia. We don't know. Maybe they feel totally misunderstood and going like, why are they asking me all the unimportant questions when
yes, exactly.
I tell them something and they never ask me about this, and this is important. Maybe it's really difficult to understand, but it's easier maybe to feel into it and play along, just like you would know with imagination, or your just connection to what they are saying to you. So this is one, like I found this really important in your book as well. And what I mentioned in the beginning, in the kind of this introduction, that I found it important for any type of relationship. So here we have this very specific one with somebody who maybe doesn't remember, but how often we argue in relationships, or we constantly think like we're right and the other person is wrong. And it's so hard to like switch out of this, that I'm in the position of all-knowing truth. And recently I was actually arguing with Tomek, with my husband, and I was reading your book. You're like, no, 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 I said that, no, 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 you said that, no, 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 no. And then I'm like reading exactly in this moment about how it's you were just kind of describing our argument, and how it's difficult to actually step out of it and actually listen to what the other person is saying, and not to what you have to say right now, and convince them that actually you don't even know what they're saying. So this is kind of really cool, when I thought like, wow, this could be actually a great relationship in many ways. And I wanted to ask you if you feel like your nonviolent communication training, did it help a lot in kind of creating better connection with
Yeah,
other
totally.
people?
Yes.
Yeah.
And these principles that you are hinting at, the principles that are universal, that's, yeah, definitely that understanding that when people express emotion, which we express emotions continuously, right? Like when you were arguing with Tomek, you were expressing emotions. You think you're talking about facts, right? But actually, most of the time you are just expressing either frustration or confusion or annoyance or whatever that is. And what NVC and nonviolent communication has really taught me is to make that switch from thinking, oh, I'm annoyed because you did this, to I'm annoyed because I have a need for reassurance, or I have a need for clarity. That is a massive shift.
And how that straight away changes the reaction of the other person when you actually don't point it. But I have to say, I studied with you nonviolent communication, and it's such a, a long way to practice this. But it helps, even like learning a little bit helps, but it is a constant process. It's just, and especially with the close ones, it's so difficult to do because emotion just takes over. And even though you think, I should be now saying, for example, I feel annoyed because but the words that come out of your mouth are like the opposite of what actually you already even know and are aware of. And I know it takes time to actually, put it every time. It's much easier for me personally with strangers, or with less kind of with people who I'm less emotionally involved with. I can say even that I practice it much more and it actually works. But it's really hard for me to do with my family and the close ones, and it's like another level of mastery, but it definitely helps.
And you need to be very careful, not to add this level of self-criticism to it, because that's always, it's always tricky, isn't it, when we learn some insights about communications or relationships style, and you got this insight and you go, oh, it could look this way, and I could be saying these things and they could be hearing that thing. Oh, isn't that amazing? And then reality hits and then you realize, oh my goodness, it's that there is that gap between how it could be and how it is. And if we fill that gap with self-criticism, you better don't learn any communication skills, because it just makes things worse. So yeah, I always encourage people to, yes, practice with strangers. Sometimes it's much easier, and also it's kind of bringing tension there. I believe in power of intention. Do you believe in power of intention? Yes. Is it kind of like the intention is there? Okay, so this interaction went the way it went. We were shouting at each other, or I don't know, disagreeing with each other, or whatever. The kind of like, instead of going into, oh, I shouldn't be saying that, or he shouldn't be saying that, we could go into, oh, actually my intention is for connection, and kind of go back to that intention. And then the skills that you can learn and practice in other situations, I think they will come naturally to the situation. You don't have to like consciously think, now I'm going to say, I feel because I need, you don't have to do that this way, if the intention is there, your skill will fill the gap if you create it with making the intention in your heart.
So again, kind of coming really back to what you're feeling, and understanding that sometimes also that feeling, like it's, you don't react straight away to that feeling, just like observe it within yourself, because usually these heightened reactions come from straight, without any kind of awareness of what's going on, reacting to the emotion. And so I think anything like even practice of meditation, regular practice, or nonviolent communication really helps. Here you're right also about attitudes that disable connection. I'm just like looking at the, the blaming, judging, labeling, or denying responsibility. But I also love what you wrote about responsibility, that we feel like if we take responsibility, we often have to take the blame. Can you say something about this? Because I feel it's really important for any type of personal development, that kind of distinction, maybe that it's not always the same, taking responsibility for your emotions and taking the blame for the, I don't know, the argument, or self-criticizing yourself.
Yeah, so there is a difference between taking responsibility for your needs and respecting the needs of the other person, and taking the blame. So for example, I don't know, if someone accused you for being insensitive, oh, you're so insensitive, you didn't even listen to me, right? So, taking the blame would be, yeah, you're right, I'm so insensitive, I'm so terrible, I'm so sorry. That will be taking blame, like kind of you buy into this interpretation of the situation. And I think actually both parties end up unsatisfied, because, okay, well, now I am to blame. Great. Now I'm that person, that is, insensitive. And this other person goes like, yeah, right, you are insensitive, they actually aren't any closer to their own needs by kind of labeling you, so actually both parties end up dissatisfied. Whereas taking responsibility would be, if I find myself thinking, oh, I find your actions insensitive, you kind of go, okay, what exactly has happened? And maybe that was that, actually I had the situation with my husband the other day when he was showing me a photo of his friend who recently died. And I interpret that when he was showing me that photo to be quite casual, that he was just saying, oh, look, I found this photo. So I quite quickly changed the subject. Whereas he got really upset, and yes, and kind of I imagine that in his mind what could have happened was that he would go, oh, she's so insensitive, here I am showing her photo of my friend who was so close to me, and she kind of changes subject, she talks about something else, I actually went dancing. so that was big kind of contrast to how he felt. And yeah, but the way he expressed it was, that when he noticed me kind of, changing the subject, talking about something else, and dancing to the song that was played on the radio that I really liked, his need for, I don't know, companionship, connection wasn't met, and he was able to get in touch with that, right? Kind of like, oh, it actually really matters to me that we share that, sensitively. And he kind of expressed it to me along those lines. While I listened to him, I didn't have to take the blame. I realized, oh, actually, supporting him and being in touch with him is super important to me. So we ended up, neither of us blamed each other in those amazing situation instances, but but we both got in touch with our needs. And realizing, actually, we tend to say, kind of when we talked about the needs of a caregiver and needs of a person looked after, we think, oh, I need to realize that as a caregiver, I have my own needs, and then the person with dementia has their own needs. So it sounds like, two separate sets of needs, but actually they are universal. And especially when we are in a relationship, our needs matter to each other, So I might, perhaps at that moment, I had a need for fun. I wanted to dance because I liked the song, but I had another need. My need was for support, for supporting him. That was a very important need. And I'm glad he told me, because if he didn't, I probably would just go for the most alive need in me that very moment, But because he was able to voice his needs, then I was able like to say, oh, actually, that actually is part of me, what constitutes me as a person, that I also care.
Yeah, but that's really important, I think, also how somebody voices that need, because if he blamed you straight away or criticized you or judged you, like, how can you dance now when I'm showing you a photo of, you would be put like, wow, first of all, you'd probably be surprised, and maybe an emotion would come and maybe you'd react straight away. So it's, yeah, that's kind of double relate. Yeah.
Yeah, but it was a bit like that, I don't think he said it in a very kind of super smooth way, like I don't think he said it like,
Darling.
I think he said it more like you just said it, um, but
You
what is
did.
important is communication is not only about what we say, it's also what we hear.
Mm.
So, okay, I could have chosen, and this is what you were telling me, right? This kind of the difference between taking responsibility and not taking blame. I could have heard it as criticism. There was a very easy way of hearing it as criticism. And actually, the way when he said it with so much emotion that I actually stopped, and I did feel the emotion filling me up to the top. I felt embarrassed. I felt shocked, kind of a bit, yeah, like, oh, it's like I completely didn't realize. I did feel embarrassed. That is definitely true. But I didn't take it like, oh, I did it wrong. It was my fault, and how could I been so insensitive. Um, so yes, I think I have trained myself, or I have, I cared for myself in a way that I know it's best for both of us if I don't go that direction. Then I have that choice.
Oh, cool. Good that you went deeper with that, because sometimes
Mm.
I feel like when, somebody is there, like, let's say you're a guest, like, and, like, I don't want people also to feel like, oh, yeah, exactly, they self-criticize themselves because they constantly react a different way, or they wish they reacted differently, and, they end up blaming themselves, which is basically a disconnection as well from the relationship with yourself, because it's really hard to kind of keep your heart open when you're constantly like on your own case. How you could do that
And
better.
yes, what you are saying now, I bet will resonate with many caregivers, because the sense of blame for not doing enough, it's very big in those people who care for others, because yes, it's kind of, sometimes dementia is a progressing illness, meaning it gets worse with time, which means the demand on care is bigger and bigger, and it's very hard to catch up, to keep it up with all of it every day. So there is a lot of self-blame going on for carers, because you simply really stretch yourself to your very, very limits. And yeah, and how do you work with that? How can you use that exhaustion, and the sense of kind of giving up? How can you take responsibility for your needs instead of blaming yourself that you're not doing enough or that you're not strong enough? I think that's very important. And as you say, it's also universal. And that's why I say about this book that this is a book not only for people who care for someone with dementia, meaning very broadly, but who care about, actually a book for anyone who cares about anyone else.
Yeah, so I think we are going to slowly wrap it up. I just wanted to also mention that you said that you kind of build the book in a way that it starts with like this conversation and connection building, but then you kind of go deeper and deeper towards death and towards maybe trying to have a connection even when there is no possibility, let's say, of verbal communication. So
Yeah.
people can also find this type of connection in your book. So it's basically from early stages to later stages of dementia. um, and can you maybe say a little bit more about this? And if you
Yeah.
have any message for people who'd like to wrap it up at the end, that'd be lovely. I'm not going to jump in anymore.
Yeah. So I suppose it's a development of relationship, right? Like when in the early stages of dementia, it's there are only episodes when you notice that something is a little bit off, that this person might not have like full capacity. And it's good to start building firm foundations for relationships straight away, because you might need to find different you need to have different foundations than the foundations on which you have had built your relationship. So if let's say, take an example of a married couple, so the foundation for their relationship might have been lots of shared memories, shared children. They might have children in common, not the same, well, they have parents up to the same children, and they might have the same house in which they lived all their lives, property, I don't know, a job, memories from school, from university, from whatever. And this is a question for all of us to ask: how much of our relationship rests on these memories? Because the memories are going to go at some point, so this is the point at which you can start building. Okay, so if our relation can't be so reliant on memories, what it can be reliant on then? This is a big spiritual question. It's like, who really is that person I'm married to? Who really is that person I care about? What can really truly connect us? And then gradually, as dementia progresses, in a sense, dementia progresses, so that kind of the situation gets worse and worse and worse. But that also can mean our connection going deeper and deeper and deeper and deeper, because we can learn to rely on deeper selves more and more and more, resulting in and I'm not talking this as an ideal that we wish we could meet. A lot of my book is based on other people's experiences. So when I was learning about dementia, I was like, hey, am I the only one who is discovering all these things? And I started talking to people, and I interviewed several people across the world. And even though, it is actually very much their testimony that those people who have built strong dementia relationship earlier, though it is never too late, this is just to say, even if you haven't managed, it's never too late to kind of shift and go deeper with that person, to the point that people were telling me that at their very deathbed, or when they actually did eventually lose that person from their lives, they said, and this is actually, that was a common phrase I heard from people saying, I never felt like I really lost them. Because they started relying on such much deeper connection that goes beyond bodily appearance or memories at all, to the point that when death comes, which it will for all of us, this sense of separation isn't actually that great, meaning that you can really sense that actually you managed to connect deep in your hearts, and maybe even to the point to say something really outrageous, that dementia was a blessing because of that.
Cool. Thank you for sharing that. So if anyone wants to get the book, they're available on all the main sites like Amazon, Book Depository. If people have anyone they care for or about with dementia, or if people are interested in the subject, like a little bit myself, because I'm really fascinated with death and kind of how we build relationship and prepare, and you just never know what's going to happen in your life, or whom you're going to meet, or what happens to your parents. But yeah, especially when you're a caregiver as well, I think this book is really amazing. So thank you so much for sharing yourself with us, Pati, and for writing the book and for having a conversation with me. We're so serious, I'm surprised. So different. We have our interview faces on. Yeah, I think it was necessary to do, and a really important message has been shared, and I hope that it's going to be helpful for people who watch it, and I hope people will share with people who maybe are in need of some support, because I think this book can be a great support and kind of like a breath of fresh air. If you burnt out, if you are a caregiver, if you feel like there is no way out, or if you feel really kind of bogged down by, or maybe sad, or traumatized, or whatever that may be, they can reach for this the Dementia Together book, and I'm going to link all of it, all the information, all your website and how to get the book in the description box for people, so please check this out there. And thank you everyone for watching. Thanks, Pati, for being a guest.
Thank you. And I wanted to so much appreciate that you took the time to do it. And specifically, I would like to thank you for wearing this necklace that goes along with the book cover. Really, I don't know whether that was deliberate, but that really fits in beautifully.
We should have the book cover, which we don't. Oops, sorry. We will be prepared better next time.
But this is an encouragement for everyone to check out
check out the cover, guys. Yeah, lovely to see you, Pati. We'll speak soon, and thank you everyone for watching, and see you next time. Bye.
Bye bye.